Welcome to the People Performance Podcast with me, Tom Noblett.
And me, Martin Johnson.
How's it going, Martin?
Good, mate, good. It makes a change for you doing that intro.
It does, yeah.
Was you nervous?
A little bit, yeah. I'm not going to lie, I might have. This might be my second recording.
So, Tom, we're in the podcast room again. We've done one before.
Yes.
Which was your debut. So this is your second appearance, but this time you're interviewing me.
Yes.
What was it that made you want to get in the podcast room and talk to me today?
I think all things considered, I did pretty well with my debut on the pod, and I'm trying to push myself to be on it more. I always see the consultants doing it, and I just want to get involved with it, actually in front of a microphone. So that's the top and tail of it, really.
I love that. We're going to come to it throughout this podcast, but it takes courage. I mean, it's a nerve-wracking thing if you are not used to it, to be recording something live, knowing it's going to go out to the world and be listened to and judged, essentially. So, but like I said to you on the first one, mate, you got a really good way about you.
Thank you.
I like the fact that you go in, right, Martin, I want to do another one. So... Mm-hmm. As always, we're going to go nice and organic. We'll go wherever this pod takes us, and I'm quite happy to answer any questions off the cuff. Just debate in real time. So, what are you thinking?
I think it'd be a good place to start with where the Attributes was actually founded and who the man is behind the Attributes, how it was founded.
So the Attributes, for anybody listening, is you might have seen a lot of the stuff we're doing online at the minute and what we're working with individuals and teams on. But the Attributes is a piece of work originally by Rich Davini. Rich is a former Navy SEAL commander. He served in the Navy SEALs for 22 years, and for a large part of that, he served in SEAL Team 6, which are the most elite sort of unit of the SEALs. Rich is a phenomenal person. He's a real intellect, and he did some fascinating work in the SEALs, as well as being a great SEAL himself and leading on many combat missions. He spent some time in the training facility of the selection process of SEALs, and he started to look at, when you look at the Navy SEALs, you get something like 110 to 120 in an intake, and the attrition rate is pretty high. You know, I think a dozen or so people end up qualifying at the end of the course. So the attrition rate's quite high. So they were looking at why do 80-90% of people, fail the course? What is it that the ones who are successful possess? And is it the fact that they are physically superior, fitness and muscle-wise? Is it that they can shoot a rifle? Is it that, what is it that allows them? Are they good on the assault course? Are they good in the academia type of things? And what they found is none of those things, because they're all skills. They're all abilities and skills, if you like, where the key. What they started to look at is what are the attributes, the innate humanistic attributes that these people possess when they turn up on day one that allow them to get through that rigorous process. Mm-hmm. And so they started to then try to define what do we mean by attributes and what are the categories and how does they lend themselves to certain levels of performance. And so when Rich left the SEALs, he wrote the book, The Attributes, 25 Hidden Drivers of Optimal Performance. The book was a huge success because I think everybody likes to understand what makes a great badass Navy SEAL, right? What allows them to do what they do. And then he's since evolved that into, there's actually 42 attributes across 9 categories, which we can come to. But me and Rich met a couple of years back. We hit it off. We had lots in common in terms of the work that I do and T2 do. And we agreed to collaborate. And now we are the UK licensee for the attributes work. We work with Rich and his team over in the US. And we deliver this psychometric testing, Tom. So to answer your question, it's a psychometric test where anybody can answer the questions and uncover what their attribute stack rank is and how they stack up against the 41 attributes, low, medium, or high. And then with that data, you get a really good understanding of how you're wired, how you fit into a team, how you're going to react in certain situations, how you're going to show up when the pressure is on, and what attributes you're lower on where they're going to be more absent And what is that telling you about the way you're going to show up also? Then you can take it a step further into team dynamics. But if that answers your question, that's what the attributes is. That's where it comes from. And we're finding in our early days that the teams we're working with on them are finding it absolutely fascinating and almost a game changer in terms of unlocking true high performance.
So if you just sort of had to give like a little tagline, maybe a couple of sentences, how would you sum that up for someone for it to like fully sink in?
We're all born through when we are born, we have 50% of our mother's genes, 50% of our father's genes. So the genes we inherit gives us a predisposed starting position to lots of things such as height, body type, eye colour, hair colour. But most importantly, what people don't realise is we're also born with some predisposed, set, innate behaviours and attributes. We're starting from a position gifted to us by our parents. Then we go through our life, our early years and our adolescent years, and through our environment, we start to be able to dial up, tune up those attributes or not, as that case may be. And so by the time we reach adulthood, we're pretty much quite wired in a certain way. And that's why we're all weird and wonderful as humans, right? Some of us are natural in certain things and others are not, right? So for me, summing it up in all the work we've ever done is you can do what I call surface level psychometric testing, like Myers-Briggs, Insights, social styles. What do you lead with? What are your behavioural preferences? The attributes really starts to give you some more detailed data around what, from birth, right? What is your innate wiring? You know, what do you possess naturally versus what are you absent of, or not absent because that's the wrong word. What are you low in? You know, what is not as conscious and as dominant in you? And how does that play out in your everyday life and the decisions you make and the way you show up?
Yeah.
So for me, it gives people a really deep and rich understanding of how they're wired, more so than any of the other work we've done to date. And that's what, you know, it's a lot. It can be intense. People got to get their head around it. But it's, like I say, for those who embrace it, it can be a game changer.
Like, as more attributes have been added to the 25, I've found that it's become, like, it's definitely beneficial that that's happened, because you could say that you may be low in a certain thing, but then you might be more proficient in another thing, and that's where you can, like, dial into that.
Yeah.
And even though you might be deficient low in,
well, you're saying some stuff which I think is a really important point that's led me in to say this. Language is incredibly important with this. So what I mean by that is there is no good or bad. There is only, when you take this test, it will, through very clever algorithms and through a 7-point Likert scale, which we call it in psychology, it's grading how dominant and strong that attribute is in you, right? Based on how you answer these questions. And you can be low, medium, or high, right? And in the mediums, we break it into lower medium and upper medium. So you actually have 4 brackets of scoring. You have the high attributes, which have scored really highly, which says they are strong and dominant in you naturally. You don't even have to think about it. These are going to come to the fore and come to the surface and show up when you're under pressure, stress, and duress, particularly, but generally in life. Your upper mediums, and that's saying that these are quite strong in you and quite apparent, and you can grab them at any point with no difficulty, right? They're just not as high as the ones in the high bracket. Your lower mediums are obviously now starting to score lower, which means they're less conscious in you. They're less dominant. So you're more unlikely to display them, or they're more unlikely to show up in certain ways when you're particularly under stress and duress. And your lows are obviously your lowest scoring ones. But here's the big thing that I love about this, right? How you show up in situations. Being low on an attribute, being actually quite low on something, can be an incredible strength in that given situation. So this is why there's no good or bad, and being incredibly high on a particular attribute could actually not serve you well in a particular situation.
Mm-hmm.
Does this make sense?
Yes. Yep.
So, like, my highest attribute is discipline. We'll come to the list shortly, Tom, but my number one scoring attribute is discipline. My ability to remain steadfast and on track with a particular goal or endeavour, right? I have that discipline to keep on keeping on, right? My lowest scoring attribute is empathy. I can't feel what other people feel in a given moment. So when you look at those, you might go, wow, Martin's ace because he's got high discipline. I bet that really serves him well. Well, it does if the situation requires discipline, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But when the situation doesn't require an overemphasis on discipline, it actually requires something else, then that might not serve me well if I'm still trying to be disciplined in that moment. And like a lack of empathy, there are situations where my low empathy will catch me out. If I need to feel what another human being feels in the moment, I'm struggling, right? We'll come on to later how I counteract that. However, as a leader, especially in business, where does my low empathy come to the fore? Well, sometimes when a situation needs to be attacked pragmatically and rationally, and we need to separate emotion in that moment from a situation, I'm really able to do it really easy, right? So my low empathy allows me to stay on task and look at the bigger picture pragmatically and not get drawn in by emotion. So if this is making sense, Tom, language is important. It's not good or bad. It's not strengths and weaknesses. It's 41 attributes that we all have to a degree, and you will have a scoring system, a stack rank of high, medium, and low. But depending on the situation and circumstance, your makeup, the whole picture of that makeup has to be taken into consideration to how you're going to show up and perform. And that's where the level of detail with this really starts to be a game changer.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's actually a really good segue into moving into what the 9 categories are.
Yep.
So I think it'd be a good place to start would be with grit.
Yeah, absolutely. So
because the attributes is split into 9 categories, although there's 2 separate groups within that.
Yeah, there's the 9 categories, and you've got 5 categories which are around self-awareness and self-optimization. So these are the things that I need to look at inwardly that serve me well or not. And then you've got the group categories or the group optimization, the team ones, where it's how do I show up and work and collaborate with others in situations and scenarios. But yeah, let's go through them one by one. And what might be worth doing, Tom, is we'll introduce the category, and then we will be able to then just pick out 1 or 2 maybe from that category, because I don't think we've got time on this pod to go through 41 attributes, right?
No.
So the grit attributes, and grit's an interesting one. Think about these attributes. When you talk about grit, the grit attributes are the things you're going to lean upon when you're going through a shorter term task, challenge, or objective. So you're sort of in the moment, faced with challenge, faced with dealing with something that's going to require some of these attributes that would constitute grit. All right. So they are adaptability, courage, perseverance, and resilience. I just want to pick up on a couple, because all of them I could talk about for hours, and they're all important in terms of showing grit in shorter term, acute, challenging tasks and activities. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's our ability to step into difficulty, uncertainty, or challenge despite it. And I say this to Xander, my boy, all the time. He's only 9, he plays sport. I say before rugby, he says, "Dad, I'm scared. I'm scared." And I say, good. Everybody who's set foot on a rugby field is scared. So you should be. It's physical. It carries risk. You could get hurt, right? And people are trying to knock 10 bells out of each other. I said, but the fact that you step on that rugby pitch despite being scared means you've got high levels of courage, son. And that's the starting gun for grit.
Yeah.
Right? The willingness to step into a situation despite it feeling uncomfortable, carrying risk or uncertainty. Look, Tom, you've come in this podcast room today only through courage.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that you wasn't absolutely bricking it or nervous at the start? Do you know what I mean?
It's a different kettle of fish, really. Like I think a lot of courage is anticipation, as in a lot of fear is anticipation. Sorry, as in the moment you actually immerse yourself in the situation that you're afraid of, it becomes a million times easier.
Yeah, and what happens with that is, and this is why courage is an important attribute, is through the power of repetition. Like if you did 10 podcasts this week, by the time you came in for your 10th podcast, you would be so much more desensitized to the effects of the fear.
Yeah.
And the thing that is the starting gun for that, the thing that you've leaned upon the most, is courage.
Yeah.
Because despite the initial feelings, you've stepped into the arena. And I think that's an important thing to understand.
Well, that's like an upper medium attribute for me.
Yeah.
Courage, it's like 11th.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes sense to me.
And if it was low, if courage was number 41, let's say for you, as in it was your lowest scoring attribute, you may have even struggled to get in the room this morning.
Yeah.
You might have done, but it would have maybe taken some talking, right? But yeah, because you know it's an upper medium, you can grab it and go, come on, Tom, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, it's actually reassuring. This is actually a really good thing for me in the attributes, that because I read my report quite often, and I think knowing what your attributes, like to what you've just said there, knowing what your attributes are, reassures you that you are naturally that way, as in if you are high on courage, that reassures you that you are courageous or at least...
Yeah. And do you know what? If you wasn't, and this is the good thing, like, let's say courage was 41, it doesn't mean to say you can't get in this room. Because you still have courage, it's just low, right? What we would then need to do, which we're getting into the intricacies a bit already, is if you was that low on courage, right, to get you in the room, we're going to have to lean on some of the other attributes that are in your upper, medium, or high.
Yeah.
To get you in this room.
Yeah.
So the understanding your stack is important, because it means that you can offset some of your lower scoring ones by pulling and leaning into some of your higher scoring ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the last one I'm going to mention on grit is resilience, because a lot of people think resilience is grit, it's toughness, it's, you know, and it's not. It's not grit, toughness, and durability. Those things are their own attributes. Resilience is our ability to rapidly return to a baseline emotional and mental state after a stressful, traumatic, or even triumphant event. Resilience is always reserved for adversity. You need resilience in adversity. Actually, resilience is how quick you get back to your baseline emotional and mental state after adversity or a stressful event, but also after triumph and victory and euphoria. It's just how quick can we get back to even keel, which is where we can be at our most calm and cognitive best at times. And resilience, think of it like elastic band. The word resilience, the definition says how quick something returns to its original form. If I pull an elastic band really wide and let it go, it returns to its original shape because it's got high resilience. Whereas if I get some clay or putty in my hands and I squeeze it tight and I let go, it doesn't return to its original form because it has low resilience. Well, the brain and our psychological mindset is like that elastic band. We can get stretched and strained at times, and we can feel overwhelmed, and we can feel tense and tight. And in the aftermath of that, however, we need to be good at getting back to our original form, our baseline state, which is our even keel. We're neither under stress or duress, nor are we feeling high and elated. We're just what I call neutral state, our neutral state. So resilience is how quickly you can do that. Now, I'm low to moderate on resilience. And a lot of people who know me might go, Martin's really resilient. But as you know, Tom, I don't recover that quick after a trigger. If I come off my baseline state and I'm pissed off or challenged, that can last a morning, a day. That could lead into another trigger, and before I know it, I've not been my best self for that day. And sometimes if we achieve something amazing, I can be dining out on it for bloody 3 days before I come back down to baseline, right? Because I want to enjoy the moment and bask in the glory. So my resilience, I don't get back to baseline that quick. Some people, it's water off a duck's back. They can overcome a challenge or adversity or have a situation that stretches them, and within 5-10 minutes, they're back at baseline, cracking on with the day.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, it would be, wouldn't it? So just rolling that up, the grit attributes, Tom: adaptability, courage, perseverance, and resilience. And we've touched on courage and resilience there as two particular ones that I feel are important in the grit attributes category. The next one is the drive attributes. So this category is drive. If grit, Tom, think about the grit attributes are the shorter term acute challenges that you're experiencing in the here and now. That's what you're pulling upon. The drive attributes lend themselves to the more longer term challenges, objectives, and goals, and certain attributes that you're going to need to stay on track, stay the course, and have the drive to achieve longer term outcomes.
Yeah.
So the drive attributes are competitiveness, discipline, narcissism, and self-efficacy. Narcissism we'll come back to, because I guess that's probably the one everyone will be like, really? You need narcissism? But we'll talk about that. Discipline I've already talked about. The ability to remain focused and steadfast to achieve a result or outcome. You need that for the drive attributes. Competitiveness, the drive or strong desire to be better or more successful than others to win. Really interesting one. Pete, don't think about sports environments. Everybody, to an extent, becomes more competitive in a sporting environment because the definition of the game is to win and lose, and there's a reward. I'm talking about competitiveness in everyday life.
Yep.
How much are you looking at others and trying to beat them and win and be more successful at all costs? What you can actually get, Tom, is you can get people who are highly competitive in sport but be low on competitiveness in everyday life. When you take them out that situation of having to compete to win a sports game into, am I really looking at other people in life and wanting to compete and win at everything? The discrepancy in that can be huge. You know, I'm very competitive in sport, but very moderate, medium in general life.
Yeah.
Just touch on self-efficacy before we come to narcissism. Self-efficacy is high in me. It's a belief in one's ability to achieve a goal, especially when the path is uncertain or unknown. It's how much to a degree do you believe in your own personal power, that I've got this, that I can do this. And self-efficacy is that, you know, if courage puts you into a situation, self-efficacy is what's going to really make you believe you can do it. And so it's a really important attribute for drive. But let's touch on narcissism, Tom. Would you consider yourself, I mean, you know what your results are, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Actually, let me ask you, where does narcissism come in your stack rank?
I've got it up here.
Is it in the lower half of your scores, or?
It's in my bottom 5.
Right, so, and narcissism for me is a bit higher up. I think I'm medium on narcissism. It's halfway for me.
Yeah, what I find really another thing I find really interesting with these attributes reports is the distinct definitions that words are given, as in they're not always the classic definition that you would associate with a word.
Well, I think that's Rich's genius, isn't it?
Yeah,
because it makes you look at a term in a completely different way.
Yeah, exactly. Because narcissism, by all intents and purposes, is like, if you call someone a narcissist, they're like the worst.
Yeah, because people think of narcissistic personality disorder, which is, this is not what we're talking about. You know, let me just give you the definition of narcissism: the desire to stand out, to be noticed, or to be recognised and adored. All human beings, to some extent, have some of this in them. Some more than others, absolutely. But self-interest and the desire to stand out and be recognised and adored is in all of us to an extent.
Yeah.
It's humanistic, right? Narcissistic personality disorder is, if you was diagnosed on one of the official tests, that's where it's to an extreme where you are desiring to be stand out, to be noticed and adored at all costs and to the detriment of others.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think of narcissism, it's like, you think of that term and it's a bad term. But narcissism, if you're going to succeed in long-term endeavours, if you're going to drive the outcome you desire, there has to be some level of narcissism involved, whether that be moderate, medium, low. Some people are high, right? Mm-hmm. Your low narcissism, Tom, makes you a very humble person at times. You don't have any desire to stand out. In fact, if I even give you recognition on the office floor, you start going red and thinking, oh my God, this feels uncomfortable. Everyone's looking at me and Martin's talking about me. And it's a very endearing thing about you. However, sometimes your low levels of narcissism mean that you don't stand out in situations where you need to, or you're not heard in situations where you need to, or you don't put your head above the parapet and shout about what you think and what your achievements are and what you want to achieve as much as you should do.
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword, right? Anything that's low or high is going to serve you well or not in other situations.
Yeah, I always imagine the scale, like scales or something like that. Like you've got to find a way of balancing it. Like the part of the reason I'm doing this podcast, I think, is to try and get myself out of that, or not out of it, but maybe improve it or increase it.
Yeah. Which is, and going back to our earlier one, you've shown the courage to push yourself. Bearing in mind you don't want to stand out, you've shown courage to push into the podcast, right? You're now, therefore, naturally pushing yourself into more narcissism to be able to do that. And in the aftermath of this, when you feel emotionally drained, you're going to need some resilience to get back to baseline.
Yeah,
right? So they're all, you can see how they all link in. But it's funny that, the desire to stand out and be noticed, you are possibly the most quietest person in the office.
Yeah.
There is no desire from you to have airtime, be funny, get laughs, create attention for yourself. And actually, sometimes I have to go, Tom, are you okay over there? Because it's been 3 days and you haven't even lifted your head up from the PC. Are you okay?
Yeah. I do. Yeah. To be fair though, that probably there's some sort of concoction of attributes there that probably explains why I can just focus on something and then completely be like, appear to everyone else, to the outside world, as like quiet as a mouse. Is he okay?
Yeah, your focus levels, when you're deeply focused, nothing else is getting any attention whatsoever, is it?
No.
Cool. So let's go into the mental acuity attributes, category 3. Now, mental acuity is not a word everybody will be familiar with, but think about it as the group of attributes that you are going to require to process large amounts of information, complex amounts of information, really quickly and accurately in order to come to conclusions. So it's almost like the mental processing, the way your brain processes information at speed and with accuracy. And some people are able to do this better than others. Some people get overwhelmed and can't do some of the things we're going to talk about. That is not good or bad, because like I said before, too much mental acuity can be a bad thing. It can really hinder certain situations where you need to be a bit more spontaneous or creative or free thinking, right? So the mental acuity attributes are compartmentalization, your ability to effectively chunk up a bigger environment or situation into smaller, meaningful pieces, and then focus on that nudge theory, focus on one thing at a time. Discernment. Discernment's not commonly used in the UK. I think it's probably more of a US term. But discernment is the ability to observe details and make accurate judgments. It's that getting into the depths of the detail. It's like if you're high on discernment, you'll probably read the terms and conditions of contracts. You actually know what you're signing up for, you know. Or you'll read every instruction of how to get to a car park when you go into, you know, somewhere in directions. Whereas I just think I'll work it out, you know. Discernment is that ability to stay in the detail and consume it and make accurate judgments. Learnability is in this category, the ability to absorb, process, and apply new information to a current or future context. Not everybody can learn quickly. That don't mean you're dumb, and it doesn't mean you lack intelligence, but learnability. I have a high learnability, which means I have this ability to read or consume something, understand the context of it, retain it, and then apply it at a later point. Whereas my wife, she's probably really low on learnability. She could read something 1,000 times, listen to something 1,000,000 times, and still not retain it. And so some people with lower learnability have to work really hard for retention. Others, they just remember names and I can remember things weirdly. I could, like, if someone told me, if I went around a room, everybody told me their name, and they came back in 6 months later, I'd have a good chance at remembering all of their names.
See, my learnability is high as well. Mine's 4th on my list, and that's so interesting about the names thing, because I am not very good with names, but good at other things. So even within these individual attributes, there's like strengths within them. If that makes sense.
There is. So let's go live into that, because you've just hit on a great point. So one of my comments to you has always been, Tom, if you're interested in it, you're all in and you will learn it. Right? So your high learnability probably becomes with some of the other attributes around creativity and other things where it's also relatively high in you. So if you're interested in it and it sparks your creative thinking, then you will retain it.
Right.
Learning Joe Bloggs' name, who comes in the office 3 weeks ago. You don't want to, you're not an extrovert. You don't really want to schmooze. So learning someone's name and retaining it is not the top of your priority list. Right? Some of my other attributes, right, around collaboration, discipline, around the drive attributes, means that me retaining somebody's name is important for what's important to me.
Yeah, exactly.
And so our high learnability means that we both can retain information quite willingly and quickly and apply it based on our other makeup and what we're interested in. Do you know what I mean? I'm extroverted, you're introverted. Straight away, I get a buzz from social situations and building relationships with people and understand the power of me retaining their name and what that will make them feel like in 3 weeks' time. You're an introvert who don't want to be in that situation in the first place. You know? So let's hope we don't meet again. Type thing. The last two on here, Tom. Situational awareness is a mental acuity attribute, the ability to absorb and process meaningful information, and task switching. Where's task switching for you actually, Tom? And the reason I say that is because I might get this wrong, but I would have thought this would be lower to lower medium in you. And the only reason I think that is because task switching is the ability to shift focus between tasks or contexts. It's not multitasking. Multitasking is a myth. The brain cannot multitask, but we can switch tasks really well. So I can switch from doing my email to have a conversation with you, to going back into the email, to answering the phone, you know, to getting up and going to the printer to sort my materials out. I can do that very quick because I'm quite high on task switching. Where's it come out for you?
It's upper medium, 13.
Right, so now I know you can do it. There's other things at play, because sometimes with you, I actually think, if I asked something of you, you switch tasks very quickly. But I don't know if you would do it on your own accord, because like we say, you become laser focused in one thing and prefer to see that through first. Rather than doing different things.
I do. But I think task switching can even, for me, be a case of like looking at like analytics on a screen. So like I like tracking, like say if I post a new podcast, for example, I could be like tracking the analytics going up on the screen, or going onto YouTube checking those, or TikTok, or whatever it might be.
So again, what's the common denominator in this for you? When you're interested in something, your other attributes wrap around it.
Yeah, because I'm a very analytical person, and so I think my task switching comes a lot from that.
Yeah.
As well as, like you say, me having a keen interest on something.
Where is curiosity and creativity for you, Tom?
Curiosity is third.
Right, so this starts to build a picture of... Sorry to unpick you live on this podcast, Tom.
I think it's one of the best ways someone can possibly learn about the attributes is doing this.
Right, so let's box off the mental acuity and go straight into the vision attributes, and then because this will explain you, for example. So the vision attributes, these are the attributes you need to visualize an outcome or a situation or a utopian result.
Yeah.
It's where you can start to bring something alive in your mind and imagine a different way of doing something or an outcome. So you're going to need creativity, the ability to use imagination. You're going to need cunning, the ability to consider problems and circumstances from an unusual perspective. Cunning has a negative connotation to it because it means, in the UK, sly or manipulative. No, the cunning mind is one that can consider a problem from a unique perspective. There's more than one way to skin the cat, the cunning mind says. Mm-hmm. Curiosity. So this is Tom's third highest.
Yeah.
A strong desire to know or learn about something or things in general. And with curiosity comes things that spark that creativity in you, that things you're interested in.
Yeah.
So if you're curious about something, Tom, because it's naturally something you're interested in, your task switching, learnability, everything from them upper mediums just gets dialed up. Mm-hmm. If you're disinterested in something and it's not sparking that curiosity or creativity, those things will probably dial down and not be as strong.
Yeah. And that's something I've definitely worked harder and harder at sort of balancing out, be that through like organising things better, making sure I've got spreadsheets and knowing what things I've got to do by when, as opposed to falling, into the danger of like focusing too much on one thing and then that could be at the detriment of something else.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a really good tool for that, for getting you to understand what you can balance, or because I think it's not always necessarily a case of just increasing or decreasing something. Like even just balancing certain things can lead to a good outcome.
Well, things for you, Tom, let's be honest, your journey so far at T2, when you're given creative freedom over something, that absolutely unlocks your curiosity and allows you to use that vision and deliver an outcome.
Yeah.
You are absolutely in your element, right? And let's be honest, when you have to fill in a laborious spreadsheet to update a different department on something that you have no interest in, it generally would go to the bottom of your list. It would, you would put it off as long as you could or forget about it.
Yeah.
And what the game-changing thing you're talking about here is, we don't want to lose creative, curious Tom, who's doing meaningful work. But I work in an organisation where that spreadsheet might not be interesting to me, but it allows Martin to understand where we are with a given project and ultimately will probably empower his decision-making around stuff.
Yeah.
So I need to get the spreadsheet done.
Yeah.
That's the transition you're making, isn't it?
Yeah.
Understanding when to come in and out of these different things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Love that. Last two on vision, innovativeness, the ability to identify and develop something new concepts, ideas and solutions, and open-mindedness, a willingness to consider and accept new ideas, opinions, or other people's perspectives.
Yeah.
I score low on open-mindedness, which sometimes when I've got a decided mind, I'm so eager and driven with some of my other attributes to go and get it done and go after it that I can close my mind off to an alternative view.
Yeah.
So my low-mindedness, high discipline, self-efficacy, drive and accountability, when them two are at play with each other, it means I'm running like the wind and rushing, and I'm closing my mind off to what people are saying. And that's something I've got to be incredibly careful of, But also, my low open-mindedness serves me well when we're in a meeting and there's 12 voices and everybody's got an opinion and we're going round in circles and we're going down rabbit holes,
Yeah.
and things aren't progressing, and I can just shut off and go, right, listening, decision made.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And have the confidence to do that. So the vision attributes are really important for bringing something alive and making sure we can see, imagine, and visualize a better or more improved outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go into now some of the team ability or the team group optimization category. So the social intelligence category. This is where we are in social circles and groups, and how some of these attributes show up in those environments. Charisma. Have a little look, Tom, because I want to know where you're at on this. The ability to captivate and attract attention, a charm that inspires devotion in others. Where are you on that, Tom?
That's in my bottom 5, charisma. Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Because obviously, I mean, I don't think you would, because of your low narcissism as well, you'd probably not describe yourself as a charismatic person, would you?
No, not particularly, no. I think, again, like the actual definition of charisma that is given on these reports clears things up. And because I'm like a very logical person anyway, I'm not like offended by it, if that makes sense. I think to certain people, they'll see charisma there and they'll be in denial about it, kind of, or...
Yeah.
But I'm like...
Yeah, because if
it
you
makes
think...
sense.
Yeah, because if you think about it, the ability to captivate and attract attention from others is anything but you.
Yeah, exactly.
You're an introvert who, with low narcissism, who doesn't want to be self-promoting and in the limelight. So that the charisma attribute is naturally, as a result of that, it's not going to be important here. Whereas it's medium to high in me, and it's incredibly important for me as a leader and as a person who does the job that I do, to try and inspire and motivate others, right? It's incredibly important that I can captivate and attract attention and have a charm that inspires devotion in others, right? So I actually, I would look at that. And if I scored low on charisma, I'd be a bit disappointed with it, right? So, But so it's the way you look at it and how it plays off with other attributes.
Yeah.
A couple of others here: emotional awareness, how emotionally aware we are, or emotional intelligence. Extroversion versus introversion. So we know that generally we're on that sliding scale. Some people are more extroverted, some people are more introverted. I get my energy and recharge my batteries in social situations and with people. You probably do so in the solace of your own house and company at times, Tom.
I think it's a bit more of it might be like I'm like kind of in between.
Yeah, I think you can step out if you need to, but you can also retract to your safe haven if you need to also.
Well, yeah, because like I like a social gathering, I like all that kind of stuff, but I'm more than happy to recharge my batteries, and I know it's important to do that as well.
So let me ask you this question. If that dial for you of introversion, extroversion went out of the middle in either direction, so you went really introverted and was in solace, or you went really extroverted and you was doing something every single day I don't think any of those would be comfortable.
I think it'd be much harder to imagine that I become a raging extrovert. I just don't think that's on the... I think it would... And to anyone I knew, if that's what happened, I think they'd think I had a twin.
So you're more likely to be more in the extroverted segment than the introvert. You'd be more probably sustainable to be more introverted than extroverted, as long as you had opportunities to step across and do some social things and be social in the workplace. I think that's pretty much you. I would say you would probably be more introverted, but the ability to step out when needed, as long as it's not too much. Humour. So humour is in the social intelligence, the ability to find the funny and laugh even when times are tough. Some people are built on humour. They have this incredible knack of when the shit hits the fan and the chips are down, they crack an inappropriate joke or any type of joke, and it settles everybody else down. Everybody has a laugh, releases some dopamine and endorphins, and all of a sudden life's a bit lighter and we're back on track.
Yeah.
And so humour is incredibly important in team dynamics and in social circles. Influential, the capacity to have an effect on the character development or behaviour of someone or something. So influential is an attribute where it may not even be intentional, but you carry influence and have the ability to impact others with what you do and say.
Yeah.
Often in the workplace, we call this executive presence. You know, those people who just walk in and have the ability to influence others, for the good or the bad, may I add. Being influential isn't reserved for the good stuff. I always say, because I score pretty highly on influential, I have the ability to change the weather at T2 for the good or the bad.
Right.
I can come in and make it, I don't know, Tom, you can tell me, you're safe in this room. Right, I can change the weather for the good, or I can probably be in a bit of a mood, and it would absolutely spread across the office.
And I think to be fair, like to an extent, like having that balance is good as well. I don't think it. I don't. Can you imagine if it was just rainbows all the time?
Yeah. Does this guy ever get pissed off?
Yeah,
you know? Yeah. Or it was, and I think you're right there. If you're always critical and moody and irritable, that's not good. And if you're always, nothing to see, everything's okay, let's just crack on, all positives, think positively, that's not good.
It'd be very suspicious, wouldn't it, as well?
It would. You need the balance, absolutely. Very well answered, Tom, thank you. Right, let's go into the service attributes. These are obviously attributes in the category of service, which means what do you possess naturally around serving others and other human beings? And this is the bit where I start to get a little bit sort of beat myself up a little bit, because I score the lowest on the service categories. So the service attribute are caring, the ability to demonstrate and provide kindness and support others. Compassion, the ability to show sympathy and concern for others. Empathy, the ability to feel what others feel the emotional state of another person. Let me just differentiate the nuance. Empathy is I feel what you feel.
Yeah.
Compassion is I don't feel what you feel, but I can appreciate how it's making you feel. So an example for that, and I always use this, and it's a silly example, but I'm not a pet person. Some people are. They adore their pets.
Yeah.
So if a person has a dog or a cat that's not very well, and they ring up and in floods of tears, and they're ringing up sick, I can't feel what they're feeling. So I can't go, oh my God, that's horrendous, and feel emotional myself, right?
Yeah.
My pragmatic mind wants to say, well, come on, it's a cat. Get sorted, do what you need to do, and then let's crack on.
Yeah.
Now, that's not the right approach, right? So what I need to do, and this is what I do, is I need to show compassion, which says, look, clearly this is a big deal to you and you are really upset about this. So I can show compassion for how you're feeling, and whatever support you need, consider it done.
Right. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I've made up over the years that this has really helped me understand me, because I thought I'm such a cold person that I can't feel what other people feel, and that I actually am left bewildered sometimes by, in my mind, how people catastrophize basic human stress.
Right.
Because I can't feel it myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I am learning to practice compassion, because clearly it is a big deal for others. So that's the subtle nuance between the two there. Generosity and selflessness are the other two. I don't know how you stack up on service, Tom, but I don't think I have a single one of those in my top half.
Service is kind of like, there's a couple in my lower medium, so like selflessness and empathy. Empathy's like 32 for me.
Which is not high.
No.
It's not that high. Yeah,
No,
it's not that high. But it's not as low as mine, which is, rock bottom, 41.
But again, like we were saying, like it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It's all a balance.
It is. And like I said earlier, low empathy at times can really serve you well.
Yeah.
And it's understanding the situations where these different attributes are either needed or not. Okay, so team ability attributes: collaboration, conscientiousness, humility, integrity, and a word nobody ever understands, insouciance. Insouciance means the casual lack of concern, indifference with regard to what other people think of you. Some people care deeply about what people think of them. So the opinions of others matter in your mind. Some people are not bothered. I don't care what you think about me. It is not going to deter what I'm trying to achieve or what I think about myself. So if you are high on insouciance, that you have you have a lack of concern to what people think, that could be wonderful, right? Because if you don't care what people think because you're high on insouciance, then you're not going to be deterred by comments, feedback, what people think. However, being high on insouciance, i.e. not caring what people think, can really not serve you well. You know, if it's to the point where you don't give a shit and you're going to carry on regardless, then you're going to not pick up on anything that, or any behaviours, or the way you're making people feel, or the way your actions are being received and perceived.
Yeah.
If you're really low on insouciance, i.e. you really care what people think, and actually it's to the point where I'm really sensitive to any piece of feedback, that's a problem. It obviously is humanistic and you care, but it's a problem because you will just spend your life feeling sensitive to anything that's remotely said. And one thing we know, Tom, is you can't control the opinions of others.
No, that's true.
Where's insouciance for you? Because I actually think at times you're pretty good at sort of engaging in that process of feedback and what people think. You don't often flinch at it that much.
That's second to bottom for me.
Right.
And I'm very surprised at that myself, to be fair.
I mean, you do. It would be interesting because there'd be other attributes at play there.
Yeah.
But like you said, there's a difference between you engaging in it in the moment and how it makes you feel on the inside, or when you dwell on it later on.
Yeah. Everyone has their own ways of dealing with things, I think.
When I think about this one and you, if it's second from bottom, it means you don't have a lack of concern for what people think. You know, there's no lack in it. You care what people think.
Right.
And without looking at your report right here in front of me, the key to unpicking this is going, right, let's have a look at what else is at play up here, which makes you care what people think. What is it you're trying to have met that makes you care what people think? I think what you're very good at, though, Tom, is it depends on the situation, but I actually think it depends on the person with you. So with me, I think with me, you are open to engaging in that tough, uncomfortable conversation, whether it's just a good, challenging debate, whether we're trying to fix problems and solutions. And I think you show great levels of resilience afterwards, and you crack on and do the job. I think if it was someone who you didn't respect, or who, I don't know, you felt you had more, I don't know, I think you would care more a little bit. You would be a bit more sensitive to what they would say, which could result in other stuff. Yeah. Depends on probably the person.
Yeah, it's probably to do with how well I know the person and what relationship I have with the person. I think that's it, really. Yeah, and again, like you said earlier on, it's situational.
It is, and I've learned that because I don't. Mine tells me I don't care what people think, and I genuinely don't. So but both me and you can become defensive, right? All human beings can become defensive. But I always say to people, ask yourself the reason why you're becoming defensive. So I could become defensive because of my low open-mindedness and my high drive, accountability, self-efficacy, and discipline.
Yeah.
So when I'm dead set on something, if you challenge me, I'll just see that as you're going to slow me down or inhibit, you're going to derail what I've cleared in my mind as the way forward.
Right.
So my defensiveness comes up to say, don't start putting a spanner in the works because I'm heading in, I've got it clear in my mind. So my defensiveness is born out of low open-mindedness with high drive, self-efficacy and discipline.
Right.
Yeah. Whereas someone's defensiveness, so another person's defensiveness might be born out of the fact that they care what other people think and it's making them, they're taking it personally.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. High emotions, and low insouciance as an example. Right, last one, leadership group. So these are the attributes for leadership. 3 big attributes we explore here: accountability, taking responsibility for and ownership of your decisions, actions, and the consequences thereof. Authenticity, the degree to which a person's actions are consistent with their beliefs, values, and desires. This is an interesting one because nobody likes to believe they're inauthentic, but low authenticity can lend itself to situations. And decisiveness, the ability to make decisions quickly and effectively. Mm-hmm. Authenticity. I've had a couple of sessions recently where a senior leader has scored rock bottom low on authenticity.
Right.
And that is like the worst thing in the world in that moment that they're seeing. The degree to which a person's actions are consistent with their beliefs, values, and desires, despite external pressures. That's the key defining line. Any leader who runs a complex, large organization, who are trying to achieve outcomes while keeping thousands of people happy, while delighting customers, whilst staying within the law and keeping safe, cannot always make decisions in line with their values despite external pressures.
Oh.
I'd actually go as far as saying is if a leader had authenticity as their number one attribute, it could be a significant inhibitor. Because
it's almost impossible, really, that, isn't it? Like to...
Can you imagine going, I had to make every decision and take every action which is consistent with the beliefs and values I hold, and run an organisation and please everybody and deliver to customers and did it. Sometimes you've got to take the unpopular situation, and sometimes you've got to make a decision where it doesn't sit right with you. But when you rationalise it, it was for the greater good.
Yeah.
It was, I'm almost going against what I want and believe because the organisation and the team need it, or society needs it, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And so the authentic leader with maximum authenticity would struggle with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I often find that authenticity sits somewhere in the middle, the mediums, the lower with people, because they can't always act within their own ideals and values.
No.
As much as we'd love to, the world doesn't work that way.
That might be one of the most interesting ones, really, because I think it'd be fascinating to see someone who has that as their first.
So I know someone with it as their number one, and they are, and what I'd describe them as, Tom, is they are the most humanistic, wonderful, trustworthy leader. So high trust comes with high authenticity. Because you know that the intent behind everything is a right one and a good one. But I think what we also established for this particular leader was there was also many scenarios where it was holding them back.
Right.
And with all the wonderful humanistic stuff in the world, if you are liked and trusted, but your organisation is failing because we are unwilling to take the decisions that need to be taken, you're not going to last very long, as likeable as you are.
So is it about them trying to get that further down the list, really?
It's about dialing it. It's about being their authentic self in the situations where it requires maximum authenticity. And it's about dialing that down and making sure you bring other attributes to the fore when you know in your heart of hearts we have to make a decision here, or we have to take a different tact to the one that I would like. Does that make sense?
You could kind of think of your attributes report as the moment in time that's frozen, and then when you press play again, you can move the things around. And
it is. There's 2 strategies with it, Tom. It probably comes into the wrap-up. There's 2 strategies with it. So when we do these workshops, Tom, what happens is, just to give the listeners an understanding, is all of the people who are participating in that team or in that group will take the attributes test individually before the day.
Yeah.
They don't see the results live. We get the results. We print off the reports individually, and then we go to the workshop the day and we work with that team. And it's quite often a leader in their team. It could be a bunch of leaders at an executive level who are trying to work as a peer group and run an organisation. It could be many different environments. It could be a sports team who are trying to better understand each other's behaviours. It could be many different situations. And then what we do in the room is we deliver the workshop where we introduce the attributes, we walk through the categories, the 41. We then do the reveal, the discovery session where they all get handed their reports. We look at their top 5, bottom 5, their mediums. And then slowly as we edge towards the end of the day and into day 2, we go, okay, so how are we going to use this?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I always say to people, there's 3 ways that can use it, but mainly 2, which is the first one is individual. So as an individual, when I go away from this workshop, I have all the information, like you just described it there, in situations. It's this is how I'm going to show up in that moment in time. If I do nothing and I'm just my natural self, this is my DNA and how I'm going to show up. And these are the attributes that are going to be strong and come to the fore. And these are the ones that if I'm not conscious, they're not going to appear at all.
Right.
And as an individual, therefore, we use the term, it's about dialing up versus dialing down. In that moment in time, given what is needed and the situation I'm in, knowing what is going to naturally be wanting to come and play here, I either need to dial that back and saying, Martin, come out of your discipline, self-efficacy, drive, accountability. Come out of that because this situation requires you to show some compassion. There are feelings, there's sensitivity. We have time. Try to hold back and understand what's going on. That's me dialing up some of the things that are lowering me and dialing down some of the things that says, I know what to do. Everybody just listen to me and let's crack on.
Mm-hmm.
So the individual outcome is taking ownership to dial up and dial down. The second thing I say is as a team, once you've all learned about your attributes, like we at T2 now, we know each other's attributes, know when to step up versus step down.
Mm-hmm.
This is known as dynamic subordination. Tom is more creative and curious than I am. So when a situation or a project needs Tom's level of curiosity and creativity, I need to step back, step down, and Tom needs to step up, regardless of command authority or rank. If I'm the CEO, I don't have the expertise and the knowledge and the attributes to spend 14 hours editing my audiobook and putting in special effects and making sure it flows and that we draw out the salient points at salient moments. I don't have that. You do.
Yeah.
And we've just been through this process, haven't we?
Yeah.
And so I've got to subordinate to you when you're going, Martin, I think we should do this.
Exactly. Yeah. And vice versa for things that you're hiring as well.
So dynamic subordination is stepping up versus stepping down. So I always say, go away. And there's a moment in time where you go, right, what's my personal individual responsibility? Do I need to dial anything up and down? And let me look at my team. I might not even need to dial anything up if I've got Tom on the team who's ultra creative and curious. So I could dial up my curiosity and creativity as much as I want, Tom. I still wouldn't be able to look at it like you do.
Right.
So there might be an option where I step down and allow you to step up.
Yeah. I think just to what you were saying as well, when it comes to the team dynamic, it provides a lot of clarity for the leader as to how they can actually subordinate dynamically, because they will know what the attributes of their team are in probably the most honest way possible, because it's there in black and white.
If that leader is self-aware enough to do that, yes. So emotional awareness includes self-awareness as one of the attributes. If you're really low on that, you don't acknowledge it, you might miss the opportunity to see what you've just said in this.
Yeah.
Or if you're really high on narcissism, you might not possess the ability to not stand out and not be the main person so you won't subordinate, because it'll mean when a leader dynamically subordinates, Tom, for all intensive purposes, you are mentally saying to yourself, this is not me. I am not the person. I am not the best person in this room or in this situation to deal with this. And for some, that's a really challenging concept. For some people who are high on some of the other attributes, who are unself-aware, for them to acknowledge that for 1 minute I might not remotely be the best person is difficult. And we see poor leadership out there in organisations where the leader refuses to dynamically subordinate to anyone, especially people underneath them, because they see that as, well, I'm senior and I'm in the hierarchical structure, you will listen to me.
Yeah.
That's a dangerous place to be. And it takes a brave leader to say, no, it doesn't matter how long I do this for, I'm never going to be better at creating video content than Tom.
Right.
Nor should I be, because it doesn't interest me. Because I haven't got the attributes that lend itself to it.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely bang on about that. And we're currently working with organisations and teams on this and saying, look, dynamic subordination matters. And in order to do it, you need to understand the attributes and the DNA of each individual in the team and where these dynamics play out. An example of this, Tom, would be if a pilot is flying a plane, the pilot, the captain of that plane, is undoubtedly the most senior person in charge of that plane, right? Say the pilot is hurtling down the runway, about to take off, and the junior ground handler radios through because they've spotted something that is a compromise to safety, and they say, stop the plane, do not take off, turn the plane around. Any captain worth their salt is not going to take off.
Right.
They're going to subordinate to the junior ground handler because they've spotted something in their world with their experience that he has not. So he'll dynamically subordinate and he'll turn the plane around. When they get back to their bay, the cabin crew will then subordinate to the cabin crew to disembark the plane. He won't do it himself because the cabin crew and the cabin crew lead are the most experienced people with the skills and to be able to do it. And so dynamic subordination works a little bit like that. I know that's a very extreme, obvious example, but in the workplace, it takes a very self-aware leader to say, this is not me. I've got to listen to what this person is telling me because they have more experience, knowledge, skills, or attributes that I don't have.
Right. And it's not like, it doesn't make you less of a leader to refuse dynamic. Like, it makes you more of a leader to dynamically subordinate. Like, that's I think that's probably a misconception. So
yeah, it's not a weakness.
Yeah.
To do that. Absolutely right, Tommy.
You can't know everything. You can't be an encyclopedia. Like, you've got to...
If you do, you're a very dangerous person.
Yeah.
No, honestly, if you do believe you know all things and you are all things to all people and you are an expert in every function of your business and your people must listen to you all the time and you counteract and argue and back every idea and every suggestion, you're a dangerous person and your organisation will fail. So, it's so important that this work gives teams, people and organisations data and evidence and information to help them work at their best, to help them dial things up and dial them down, to help them step up and step back, and to help leaders know when and where it's appropriate to dynamically subordinate.
Yeah.
And, we're just loving it. We're loving it. We're currently rolling this out to the NHS, to fire and rescue, police. I've worked in elite sports with it. We've got corporations and sales teams and, leadership teams. We've got all sorts of people going, we want to understand what this means and how we operate.
Yeah.
So if anybody out there is listening and you've enjoyed this and you want to get in touch, please do, because we believe strongly in it and I think it's a game changer.
Yeah, you could do that by contacting help@trans2performance.com. Would that be the best?
Nice, Tom. Nice little
Would that be the best email?
Nice little call to action there at the end. At help@trans2performance.com, we can answer any questions for sure.
Yeah. If you enjoyed this episode, please do subscribe, follow, do all of the good stuff. Leave us a 5-star rating and let people know about this podcast, as we have just recently rebranded it to the People Performance Podcast to better reflect the kind of things that we're doing, the kind of work that we're doing, and the kind of topics we want to cover.
Cheers, Tom. I enjoyed that.
Me too. I think it was very in-depth and very interesting. I loved it. Thank you very much. And we'll see you again for another People Performance Podcast.